Is back again here. Welcome back again. This is another mini project with some Skeleton Sherman, which I developed a while back for simplistic, minimalistic Sherman writing. And this time I wanted to try and see if I could do that on a sentence level. The previous attempts has been just a simple word or two or three words in a name. So I've not done a full sentence before in this style. So this is what you're seeing me attempt now, making some planning, making some proto writing. And at this stage, I just need to figure out what I've got to work with and how much everything takes up. And I really want to have the center word there in green. So apart from that, the rules are pretty non-existent. So making a backup, I'm now doing some destructive editing, making the raw shapes, and at this stage, I'm already trying to think about how I want everything to connect up because I want this to be a part of the Skeleton Sherman vibe that I'm making up is the idea that everything is sort of interconnected in various ways, and you then strip away the bits and pieces that are not strictly speaking necessary for actually understanding the writing. And so that's what you're seeing me do here, starting to take away bits and pieces that doesn't actually affect anything in theory. But taking a step back, I didn't really like this approach, so I decided to delete this and make another attempt with a backup. And this time, I want to add on to the fact not only does everything have to be connected in some way, mostly, but I also wanted it to be a single line tracing the whole thing together. So what I mean by that is you start at the bottom center. That's the first word, and there is one single line that leads to the next letter, the next word, and then a line from that word to the next word, and so on, so on. So one big concentric spiral of sorts that leads the reader through from one word to the next, because the actual composition of the text here is really not standard. If you were to read this as a normal Sherman, it would be gibberish because you have two spiraling parts of the sentence intermixed with each other. And that's not the way you're supposed to read normally. You just go anti-clockwise, counterclockwise. But this time, you actually need to follow the single line that I'm making up right now in order to skip the words that you don't need in the first roundabout, but you do need to read in a second. So this is the blue line I'm trying to create here as one singular guideline, literally speaking, to help you navigate which words you need to read when. So the end result is, as you see here, sort of two spirals, an outer spiral and then an inner spiral that sort of connects the two layers of text. And at the same time as I'm trying to make this work, I'm trying to figure out how I can delete non-interesting segments to leave behind the interesting segments. At the same time, also remembering what needs to be there and what doesn't in order to not mess up the actual letters themselves. And this took a few attempts, but I did get it done, including some sentence circles around certain parts because I need some punctuation. This is a quote after all. And yeah, all the while trying to keep some color coded semblance of order in this. And now you saw there at the side there, I keep my backups. Especially in cases like this, I need a bunch of backups because every destructive step of the way changes the layout of the remaining text. So if I need to go back a certain stage, I need to have that stage frozen in time and allowing me to grab it again. So if this was just one linear workflow, then that wouldn't be necessary. But because this is a fluid and this is a lot of iteration based work, I need to have multiple backups of each stage. Now at this point I'm adding the non-essential lines, and after that it's time to look at the dots. But at this stage I'm just making the functional lines that need to be there but aren't part of the big guideline. So I'm trying to keep that separate so you don't get confused. There should only be one line to follow at all times. That's the philosophy I'm trying to make work here. And as a side note, during recording I didn't catch this. I did catch it afterwards. But in the first word we do have a spelling mistake that I didn't catch until the time of this recording, whereupon I did go back and fix that, which took a little bit of time, but it was possible due to the big amount of backups I had of the actual raw text before I decided to cut it up. So that was a bit of a saver there on my part. If I hadn't had all those backups, it would have been a nightmare to fix. A nightmare on the same scale as the Fear in Your Sales project. So, but anyway, I did get it fixed. So props if you can figure out what that initial mistake is. Yeah, so vowels is always a little bit interesting to work with in minimalistic Skeleton Sherman because you can delete a surprising amount of them, but you still need to have actual functioning lines interact the way they're supposed to. So that is the main hurdle with this style. Sometimes a line need to interact with another line, and so my cutaways need to be distinctive enough from those functional lines to not be confusing. Here you can see I'm messing about with the L to figure out what is the least ambiguous I can make it. And on the whole, this whole style is just really dependent on trying to cut away small pieces, see if that works, cut away another little piece, see if that works. There's not, unfortunately, a lot of room to maneuver with using arcs because a lot of the time you need a finished path. As soon as you start cutting, you are working with nodes only, which makes this considerably harder to go back once you have taken that step. So it needs to be perfect or not at all in some ways. And it just gets harder to be adaptive in your writing once you have decided to start cutting, at least for this style. So what you're seeing me do now is I'm trying to figure out how I want the reading line to be extra distinctive. I'm going to do some color work on this, but in itself, I'm trying to thicken the actual path itself wherever it's possible so that I have a visual indicator that this is different than the rest. And I'm not quite sure if it worked out all the way through, but it worked enough that I'm pretty happy with it. So just for color work purposes, I'm now marking it up and unionizing the inner and outer guideline. So it also becomes pretty easy to see the interconnectivity of the overarching text. So having done that, it's now time to actually do the color work. And I had no idea what I wanted to do here other than the fact that I wanted something red involved. So I tried to figure out how I could do some contrasts that didn't suck and tried to find ways of making the guideline distinctive but still sort of part of the whole. I ended up just doing a brighter red for a given value of brighter, and then just mess with the center word a little bit. I wanted the center word to be a little bit eye-catching. So I had to do a few iterations of how I wanted the center to stand out a bit, and I'm not incredibly satisfied with this, but it does get the job done, and I guess that's the best I can say about it. It's a bit of an afterthought, the whole centerword thing, but I tried to, do a bit of different iterations here. And in the end, I decided to go with some yellowish to sort of keep in the same color scheme, to not deviate too much. And then I added some texture, just real quick and dirty. And I think I can't decide if that did a major good thing or if it just did some good things. But this is where I stopped recording. This was the final product before I fixed that mistake. And once I did fix it, I also changed the center color a little bit. So that's what you see on the thumbnail. That's what you see on the thumbnail. And I'm gonna leave the project here. I did the thing I wanted to do. I made a Skeleton Sherman sentence. So this is sort of a proof of concept, really, but still with some actual meaning behind it. And I'm pretty happy with the text. Not sure about the color scheme yet, but I'm gonna stop it here. So that's the project. Thank you for watching.